to myself, okay, like if I'm going to do this, I need to consume anything and everything real estate in order to make it work, right?
Welcome, everybody, to Talk is Cheap, the Fight Against Mediocrity. Today, we have Chase Johnson on the podcast. Chase was born in Ogden, Utah, and then later moved to Cedar City, where he eventually earned a degree at Southern Utah University. While attending SUU, he met his wife, who was recruited from Russia to play tennis, which is really cool. After 6 years working in sales at Gold's Gym, he started working for Vivint, selling security and home automation door to door. Vivint eventually led him to San Antonio, Texas, where he continued to be very successful selling. Around that time, he started focusing more on real estate, and his passive real estate income quickly replaced his earned income, and real estate turned into his passion. Real estate has provided Chase, his wife, and their 2 hound dogs more freedom than they've ever experienced before. Welcome, Chase. Super excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad you brought up my dogs. So I love them probably more than any human.
That's good, dude. I'm
So, but
surprised
yeah,
they're
I'm
not
excited
right
to be
there
on.
with you
Thank you.
then.
I know. Yeah. If I was home, they'd be right next to me.
Oh,
So
there.
they follow me all over the house.
Cool, dude. Well, tell us about your journey in sales and real estate.
Yeah. So honestly, as far as real estate goes, I started fairly passive. My plan was, to eventually find a job and work for a company that really, allowed me the time and freedom, I guess, to pursue, other avenues such as real estate. So I knew fairly quickly that, after working, in like a corporate type setting, that, your typical 9 to 5 job wasn't gonna allow me the autonomy that I needed. Just because, I mean, I was in sales, and 9 to 5 in sales, it's never truly 9 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
especially for me. It actually honestly turned into probably like 8 a.m. to like, sometimes midnight. So, because I was working in, no, sorry, living in Cedar City, going to school, working at Gold's Gym, and then I would drive to St. George back and forth, so it was
Wow.
really crazy. But yeah, so during this time, so it was actually towards the end of working at Gold's, I was presented to work as a 1099 employee, right, for Vivint selling security and home automation, right? So the idea was that, we'd work all summer and cram 12 months worth of, your traditional type work into, 4 to 6 months. And then I would use the rest of the time to pursue things like real estate, right? So when I made the commitment to, leave the kind of, I guess, corporate world, that was when, I thought to myself, okay, like if I'm going to do this, I need to consume anything and everything real estate in order to make it work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was for probably, I don't know, I would say 3 to 4 years, I read as many books as I could. My YouTube feed, it's filled with anything and everything real estate. It's like, finance, how to find deals, all that. So I talked to anybody and everybody that I could who was, kind of already in this space, which for me ended up being like my greatest source of, like, I guess learning. So, but yeah, I'd pick their brain, just learn as much as I could from them. So I think it was around 2015. Yeah, 2015. We bought a townhome in Saratoga Springs, Utah, that we started making money on, right? Because it was right around this time that I moved to San Antonio, but my wife, she stayed back, right? So we found renters, that could move in with her, and we started making money off of that, right? So we weren't paying the mortgage, right? We were making
Yeah.
money off of it. So when I got, let's see, so we held that property for, I would say, a couple of years. Shortly after we got it, they announced that they were going to build a Saratoga Springs temple. I remember I was actually at the gym in San Antonio, and they announced that they were going to build that temple. And I text my wife, I'm like, babe, we just made a lot of money on that property.
Yeah,
So,
seriously.
because historically what happens is when they announce that, the property values, they kind of skyrocketed. So we kind of looked into that. So, but
And for those of you who aren't from Utah or anything, like when he says there's a temple announced, there's a temple for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the majority of maybe not now, but there's a lot of members of that church in Utah. And so whenever there's a temple announced, that area seems to rise in value. So anyways, keep going.
yeah. No, so we cashed out on like, 70, 80K in equity.
Yeah.
But what we did was we actually did what's called a 1031 exchange, where we took the equity in that house and we actually rolled it over into two like investments in San Antonio, right? So that honestly was the true catapult for us. It really was. So it was probably the best deal ever when we got into it. And I was so confident. I'm like, babe, like, don't worry about it. Like, I promise it's gonna work out. And it ended up, working out really well for us. So, but so yeah, so that was when we moved to San Antonio. So, when I felt like, I was finally ready to pull the trigger on a fix and flip, which is ultimately, my goal. I started reaching out to contacts that had properties that they were working on and offered to help them in any way that I could, right? So I had a friend that, well, he turned into a friend. I set him up with a security system here in San Antonio. He had properties that he was currently working on. I actually went to his properties and I helped him with like flooring and paint. And he fell through the ceiling at one point. I helped him fix it. But yeah, it was a good experience for me, right? So that relationship kind of bloomed, and networking just kind of took off from there. So right around that time, though, I had a friend. He reached out to me who was trying to wholesale properties, and he asked me if I wanted to do a deal together, right? As far as a fix and flip. So we found a rehab job that we did together. We actually ended up netting $73,000 on that
Wow.
after all expenses and everything, and that was 5 months worth of work,
Yeah.
right? So, and at that point, I had actually sacrificed summer sales time to make that work, but it ended up being probably one of the best things that I did because I made more in that 5 months than I probably would have going and selling. So yeah, that ended up working out really well. But that that was kind of when I realized that, you know, I was a little bit more passive with real estate than I wanted to be. But I think seeing the money itself come in, it was like, wow, like I could really make this work. So, but that's when, I realized I kind of wanted to focus on it and turn it into more of a scalable business.
That's so cool. I like how I think a lot of times, someone looks at you and they're like, holy crap, how did he replace his earned income with passive income? Seems out of reach, but when you hear your story, it was just little by little. Hey, that first townhome in Saratoga, which, at the time, if it's anything like the people I've helped buy homes, it was probably scary. It's your first home. You don't really know what you're doing.
Hmm.
But then after that, you're like, oh, that wasn't too bad. That was easy. And then just went up from there. But one of the things that I really
For
liked
sure.
what you said is, and I hope the listeners caught it, is you said my YouTube feed was full of real estate videos. Like I would talk to everyone. And I think that's something important to point out in your journey is skills and knowledge come before money. Like you have to develop those skills. Tell us more about that. How important was it during that time of knowledge accumulation and skill accumulation? How important was that in your success?
Honestly, it's so essential. It really is. And really, it's the most fundamental thing if you think about it, because when it really comes down to it, there's things in life, right? You're like, okay, I don't know how to do this, so learn how to do it. And it really is that simple, honestly. People hit me up all the time and they're like, hey, Chase, how do I do this? How do I do this? I'm like, well, I mean, the internet's free, you know? I mean, I'm always willing to help people out, but there's so much information out there,
Yeah.
and that's all free. And it's seriously at the tips of our fingers, and all we really have to do is go out and get it. So, I mean, if you're consistent enough, and that really is the key. You have to be consistent with it. If you're consistent with it enough, you can learn literally anything you want.
Yeah.
So for real estate, it's super, super important, honestly. So
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, it's all there for free, but it's easy too. It's like some people think, oh, that's too easy. And then the easy things are the hard things. Like,
yeah,
oh, it's there, it's too easy. There's got to be another trick to it. But no, I really
yeah,
like that.
for sure.
As you got into real estate, so I'm a huge advocate of sales. I love sales. I mean, I think
Mhm.
everyone should be in sales. How important were your sales skills as you transferred into real estate?
I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think that sales itself, I mean, there's really nowhere to begin, I guess, or end with this question. But I mean, my sales skills, they've helped me really tremendously, honestly. The hardest part about, real estate investing is finding good deals to invest in. I mean, given that for, a few years, I mean, my sole job at Vivint was to, get dropped off in a neighborhood and then hunt down, deals. And that was probably the most valuable skill that I picked up on, right? So I remember being terrified to talk to somebody that I didn't know, like it was so scary for me for some reason. So let alone cold contacting them, at their house.
Mm-hmm.
So fear of rejection was so real with me. I mean, sales, especially door to door, I mean, it faces you with rejection literally like, day after day, like second after. It's honestly, it's like you knock on the door, rejection. You knock on the next door, rejection. So you get to the point where you become fairly numb or immune to it, to the point where you don't even notice it. It's almost like weird, because it translates into almost every other aspect of your life. Like you'll see, I mean, you'll be doing something completely random, right? Not even related to sales, and you're like, you run into kind of a speed bump, and your mind is just so immune to like the rejection that you're like, oh, cool, and you figure out a way to get around it. You know what I mean? And that's essentially all sales really is just
Yeah.
problem solving. That's really all it is. If
Yeah.
you can learn to solve problems, you can, be good really at anything. So, but I mean, now it's really nothing for me to just go knock on a random door in a neighborhood and
Yeah.
ask them if they're wanting to sell their house, right? So, and actually, the last property that we picked up, it actually came because I drove by, I saw the house, and I noticed that it was, not as nice as the other houses around it. So I knocked on her door and I asked her if she would be interested in selling. So given, kind of how we structured the deal on it, we actually walked into $60,000 in equity. So
Wow.
um, we could sell the house right now and make, money, but we're gonna keep it because we've got healthy cash flow every month on it. So
Good. I love it. So
yeah,
basically what you're saying is sales is essential to life. Like everybody at some point in their life, if they want to be successful, need to learn the skill of sales, which is really just problem solving.
yeah, oh for sure, yeah, yeah. Honestly, I think it's probably the most essential skill in life that you could possibly learn. I mean, at the end of the day, it really all it is. It's simply you have a defined starting point, you've got a defined end point, and then it's just figuring out a way to get there. So, I mean, like I said, it's more problem solving. So, problem solving, it really is everything in life. Every day we wake up with some sort of goal that we know that we need to get done. No matter how trivial, even if it's going to the grocery store or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Sales, it gives you the tools that you need to find more efficient ways to navigate getting what you want.
Yeah. And I mean, I think
So
with real estate for sure is problem solving. Like there's so many unknowns in real estate. So you have to be ready to confront whatever comes at you and just be like, okay, cool, let's figure it out.
yeah.
Something when we were, I think we were texting, you had mentioned um, that you were always really passionate about, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so tell me if I'm saying something that's false, but you were telling me how
Mhm.
real estate had always been your passion and selling at Vivint or whatever was kind of just a means to an end. But at one point you
Mhm.
woke up and you realized, man, I'm not where I want to be. I'm still here at Vivint. Like, what's going on? Tell us about that because,
Mhm.
and the reason I ask is I think a lot of people get comfortable where they're at and wake up one
Mhm.
day and be like, crap, like, how did I get here? Time's flying by. Like, tell us And I think most people will just keep going. You're different. You made the switch, which is awesome. So walk us through that and teach us, how you made that switch, why you did it, and how others
Mhm.
can do it as well.
Yeah, so I had been, I realized that I'd been kind of putting it off for a while. So it was around the time that I, figured out how to scale. Originally, I mean, acquiring real estate, it really seemed like such a daunting task. But I think it's because, the path, it wasn't really laid out. I mean, it was laid out, but I guess I hadn't actually really gone there before. So, I mean, you've heard the analogy. It's like driving a car at night. You don't need to see, what's a mile ahead of you. All you really need to see is the next, 20, 30, whatever feet.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so I mean, I think after, reading and consuming real estate content, like I saw it laid out before me because, you know, I I don't know, I hadn't gone through the process physically, so it still didn't seem possible to me. So in life, I mean, I think a hard concept to grasp is knowing where you need to go, not really knowing how to get there, what it feels like, but jumping into it regardless. That's really hard for people to I guess conceptualize. So fear of the unknown or fear of failure or loss or whatever. I mean, these are all things that held me back, right? It wasn't until, I developed more of a relationship with fear and kind of changed my perception that I realized fear is more or less of a sign that you should probably do it. And that's kind of like how I've kind of led my life since then. It's like, you see something that scares you and you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I should probably do it,
I love that,
so
dude.
because you end up being so grateful that you did it, you know what I mean? So no matter what the outcome, I mean, if you persist and, more power to you. If you persist and fail, now at least you know what not to do, and the path, before you, it's more clear than it probably ever could have been, and you have, way more tools in your tool belt to go out and make it happen. Either way, I think that you should never let fear stopping you or stop you from doing something that you wanted to do. So for me, it just stopped me for too long, and I realized that, hey, look, it's time to stop messing around. So it's really crazy that what happened was, I remember the point. So we actually, my wife and I, we made a New Year's resolution to acquire 4 rentals in that year, right? So we actually ended up doing it in the first quarter.
Wow.
So ultimately, I mean, that changed, all that really changed was my decision to act, and that's kind of what changed for me. And I think what it was just setting your intention and putting it out there,
Yeah.
and then everything kind of aligns to, make it happen for you.
Yeah. And I think that
So,
focus too, like I want 4 units, gonna do it, focusing in on it. I think that helps too,
mhm.
because I don't, had you ever set a goal before, like a specific, I want to hit this number of units
No,
before?
actually, no, we
Yeah.
didn't. There was really no specific number. It was all just like kind of like up in the air, like we had talked like, oh, we want to get into this and maybe do this and maybe this, but we had never had, like a specific number. Okay, this is the date that we're going to do it. Um, and this is how we're actually going to get there. So, but it really is crazy how like the universe kind of aligns everything once you set your intention.
Yeah. No, and I love it. And it's
So,
always so funny because in almost every, you know, self-development business book you read, it's like write down your goals. There's power in writing down your goals. And I think it's to the point where we're kind of numb to it and we think, okay, yeah, I know. But that just shows right there what you did, getting it on paper, writing it down, because our minds, we're good at tricking ourselves into thinking we're being specific, but our minds allow us to be so vague with what we're going towards. Um,
yeah.
I wanted to point something out that you said, and I don't even, I hope the listeners realized it. And if you didn't, like, go back a minute or two and listen to it, you said, um, I realized that I was succumbing to fear, basically, like I was letting fear hold me back. But then I faced it, and I've always done that since. And then you said something
Mhm.
really cool. I like how you said, when you face fear, you're usually glad you did in the end. And even if you fail, even if like you face the fear and you fall flat on your face, at least you learned, and then you know what not to do. So either way, if you're
Mhm.
scared of something, like, just do it, because you're either going to succeed and be
Mhm.
happy you did it, or fail and learn what not to do. And I think sometimes they get paralyzed by fear. I know I have, like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of built into us, right? Like I have such beef with like, some methods of like traditional parenting because, anytime that you're like, like in public, right? You see parents talking to their kids, they're like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this.
Yeah.
I mean, people have to have, rules and, regulations and stuff like that. Um, but I mean, I think for the most part, like not doing something that we don't know how to do or whatever, we're kind of beat down, as children, and we're taught, don't do this, don't do that. And it's kind of sad, right? Because kids, like, all they really know is, hey, this is what I want. And they'll do literally,
Yeah.
they'll bend heaven and earth to make it happen,
Yeah.
And that's just like, that's intuitive, it's taught. I mean, it's intuitive. We're born with it. But then life kind of like beats it out of you. And I think that it takes, kind of a special person to really recognize that and be like, okay, look, like I was born knowing how to get what I want. I'm gonna, rewire my brain and take the fact that, hey, look, like this might scare me, but it's 100% irrelevant. It means nothing, when it comes to getting what I want. Like if fear is stopping you, then you need to change your relationship with fear immediately
Mhm.
because it's holding you back.
Yeah. No, I love that. And you're totally right. I mean, you hear parents tell their kids, and I wouldn't be surprised when I have kids if this slips out every once in a while because it's just so inherent in us. But like, don't talk to strangers, don't do this. But then I think that's one of the reasons people struggle with sales or getting into sales is because they've been told their whole life, like, don't talk to strangers. But then, one day it dawned on me, like, strangers have everything we want. Like, it was a
Hmm.
stranger, the person who sold you all those houses. Like, the stranger, every
Yep.
time you knocked a door, who purchased a home automation system from you. Like, strangers have
Hmm.
everything that we want. I love that, dude.
For sure. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
couple more questions as we wrap things up here. Um, I think like I said, I had these questions here, but I think we've just like hit on them just in our conversation.
Yeah.
Um, I guess let's do three more questions. Why do you think this is always an interesting question I like to ask people? Why do you think people settle for less than their full potential?
I mean, again, like I think for the most part, there are a lot of people out there. They weren't really given the tools or, I guess the know-how to really think bigger. So, I mean, like me personally, like I grew up on a farm in Utah where the meaning of work was just like instilled into my brain from like a very early age. And it was literally all that I knew. So thinking bigger, knowing how to problem solve or working hard, it was just a way of life. I mean, but you have people, I mean, they might have, grown up in like a vacuum or whatever, right? Where thinking bigger, it's just not a skill that's really taught. So, I mean, you can't really blame them, right? But so they just kind of go throughout their lives living day to day. But I mean, I think that these people are kind of like an extreme minority. And for the most part, I mean, everybody, they do have some sort of, goal or wish or dream or whatever. But I don't know. My take on it, I think ultimately people, they fall into, I would say, three categories, right? So you have the people where they're born, they live their lives, they're not ever really, taught that there's kind of a bigger world out there that they can pursue, and they just kind of live day to day, like I was saying. So um, they uh, they might see, things that they want to do and think, oh, I could have that one day, but everybody around them, they get up, they go to work, they come home, and that's it. So that's all they know.
Hmm.
Right, but I think the second group of people, which I think most of the world falls into, they're the group where, they have goals and wishes, things that they want to accomplish, but they might know that if they work hard, they set their minds to it, they could have almost whatever they wanted, but they might even start a new venture or read a book or two, but they kind of bounce around from thing to thing and they don't really commit to one thing or the other. They lack the persistence or the focus,
Hmm.
on one thing and then get really good and then blow it up, right? But I think the third group, probably the most rare, I would say, and I think that's the group of people, the people like us are in, where they see something that they want to do and they just do it, right? They do it because getting what they want, it really is that simple. For me, I guess in my mind, it's always been, this is what I want. I don't know how to get there, so I just need to learn how to get there, and it's that simple. right? So I think, once you learn how to get there, like, all you need to do is just do it and that's it, right? So for me though, up until recently, like I've kind of always been like a classic overthinker. Right? I'd come across like a real estate deal, for example. I run numbers on it. I talk to contractors. I look at comparables. I would talk to neighbors, to see like what the neighborhood was like. I would do research, and it was almost as if I was looking for some reason to kind of validate the fear that I was feeling, and it stopped me from pulling the trigger on it, right? So some of my best deals though, they've actually come from me overthinking. Then I literally would wake up in the middle of the night, and I think to myself, wait, this is a good deal. Like why am I sitting on it? And then I wake up the next day, I put in an offer, I put it under contract, and it ends up being like a way better deal than I probably could have even imagined, right? So
Mhm.
it happened with a deal that we did recently where we're doing a cash out refinance on. We should close on it, I think tomorrow actually. We bought it at 60,000. We put 12,000 into it, and it appraised at the refinance for 160,000,
Wow.
right? So yeah, so the difference we're actually pulling out 75% on doing a cash out refinance, and we're putting into more deals, right? But ultimately, I think it does come back to fear. I mean, being faced with the fear daily, it's really helped me see that if I'm confident in the numbers or the process or the outcome, like I said, the fears, I mean, it's irrelevant. So, but the only way to change your relationship with fear is you have to first become confident in the process itself, right? So once you become confident in the process, fear of failure becomes a non-factor, and like I said, it turns into an indicator that you should probably jump or, you know,
Mhm.
jump at something.
Yeah. And you mentioned it before. I mean, in order to gain that confidence, like at some point you just have to start and just try it and just
Mm-hmm.
go for it. And I
Yep.
think that's a probably the most profound answer anybody's given me. So I really, really like that. I agree with you. Um, I tell everybody that a lot of people start, very few finish. And that's with anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a gym membership in January, but in December, you'll see the true people who are in there. But
Yeah.
no, dude, I love that so much. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I was going to say that you mentioned earlier that you just mentioned again is a lot of people just don't know how to, I don't know if they don't know how to think big. I think they dream, but it's not real. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a dream, it's a fantasy, but it's like, I could never do that. And I think that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the reasons the internet is changing the world so much is because there are people who are sharing how to do things, whereas before it was so difficult to get access to that. And so people are starting to
Mm-hmm.
believe, wow, I could do that too. I know that's for me. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
believe what I can do probably for the most part because of other people saying, oh yeah, I did it and it wasn't very hard. Like you could do it too.
Yeah, it really is. It really is cool to see. I mean, you got platforms like, TikTok or Reels or Instagram or whatever, where, you see all these people with all these followers and they're driving, fast cars and whatever. But I mean, yeah, it really is cool to see, like, because there's kids these days. I mean, because of guys like, Gary Vaynerchuk or whatever, where, he goes around to garage sales and he just, he picks up things for super cheap and then, sells it online. I mean, there's kids these days that are, making so much money that it's really crazy. I mean, the shift in entrepreneurship because of things like social media is really cool to see.
It's leveled the playing field. Like
So,
you don't need a ton of money
yep.
to blow up anymore. Awesome. Hey,
No.
before I do my last question, everyone needs to follow Chase. He's amazing. He provides a lot of great value. How can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you?
Yeah, so I'm willing to give out my phone number, my email, whatever I have to do. Follow me on Instagram. It's flipping underscore San Antonio. And yeah, I mean, if anybody wants my phone number, just hit me up on Instagram. And yeah, I'm always willing to help out. So the best thing that you could possibly do in real estate is find people who are already doing it and just kind of emulate what they're doing. So
Yeah,
that'd be my biggest piece of advice.
I love it. Thank you. And my
Yeah.
last question, it's my favorite question, but I'm very biased. What does the fight against mediocrity mean to you?
Yeah, that is such a good question, honestly. So Honestly, so mediocrity, when it comes down to it, it's stagnation. That's all it really is. So stagnation, if you look at almost literally every category, it's death, right? Whether it's medically, financially, economically, it doesn't matter. Stagnation is death, right? I mean, if the blood in your veins becomes stagnant, you die.
Yeah.
If your money runs out or it's stagnant, you're poor. So honestly, death scares me, as it probably should. Especially, I mean, if it means that you aren't really achieving what you want in life. The actual thought for me of waking up one day near the end of my life and realizing that you didn't do as much as you could, that's really scary, right? Because at that
Yeah.
point, there's nothing you can do. That's it. Time's run out.
Mm-hmm.
Fighting, I think, is the other keyword here. I think to, fight against mediocrity, in my opinion, it's ever evolving. It doesn't ever really stop. There's no end, there's no beginning. It's just something you're always doing. I think, to fight against mediocrity, it's a good goal to have because it's never really one, like I said, that can be reached in the sense it's kind of ever evolving. So if we can push ourselves every single day, no matter what, to constantly, fight against stagnation and ultimately death, I think we'd be a lot happier.
Yeah. That's the paradox, right? The more you fight it, the happier you become. The harder it is, the happier you are. I love it. Thank you so
100%.
much, Chase, for being on the podcast today. If you're listening to this, go back to the beginning and listen to it again. Chase has dropped a lot of knowledge in here that'll help you change your life. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.